Welcome to our after-show conversation, where we take a closer look at the people and organisations behind the stories we share on the podcast. Today, we're following up on episode 9, which explored how one barcode, the GS1 data matrix, helped transform the tracking and management of investigational drugs in clinical trials. Joining me is Nicolas Le Rudulier, the author of the case study that inspired this episode. He's closely familiar with the organisation at the heart of the story. Just a quick note, the company was known as Creapharm at the time of the case study, though it now operates under the name Myonex. For consistency, we'll refer to it as Creapharm in this episode. Nicolas will share his insights on how global standards are shaping the future of clinical trial supply chains. Nicolas, welcome, and thanks for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me on Scan Stories. It's a pleasure to revisit a topic that sits at the core of what we do, making sure that investigational drugs are identified clearly, accurately, in a way that's understood by everyone, across all partners and at every stage of the product's life cycle. Reliable identification isn't just about logistics, it's also a foundation for innovation and clinical research.
Let's start with a quick introduction. Can you tell us about your role at the time of the transition and how you came to document Creapharm's shift to GS1 standards? And now that Creapharm is Myonex, how does that journey connect with what Myonex is doing today in clinical trials?
Back then at Creapharm, the production management system relied on an internal identification method, inspired by GS1 approach for commercial drugs, but it wasn't really fit for clinical trials. So when GS1 launched a working group to build a dedicated standard for investigational products, we knew we had to be involved. As a specialist in clinical trial logistics, my role at Creapharm was to lead the upgrade of our clinical distribution tools, in line with what we previously did with production tools. We wanted to integrate GS1 identifiers to ensure consistency, traceability, and better communication across partners. I joined the GS1 healthcare group and helped apply the standard inside our operations. The real power of a standard is that it works with everyone, but at first it can feel like a big leap, especially in such a regulated environment. That's why sharing real-world examples is so important. It helps demystify the process and encourage broader adoption. Today, as Myonex, we continue to be a central player in the clinical trial supply chain, and we are still pushing forward. The goal now is interoperability, connecting all stakeholders across the clinical supply chain.
In the main episode, we talked about how clinical trial supply chains used to be fragmented, with each partner using their own codes and systems. Why was that such a challenge in practice?
The issue was simple. Every partner used their own codes and systems. Each time a drug changed hands in the clinical supply chain, the new partner are to manually re-enter and recheck product data. That means duplication of efforts, wasted time, and most importantly, a real risk of errors and at every steps.
You were part of the GS1 clinical trials working group that came together back in 2017. What was the goal of that group? What kind of change were you and your peers hoping these standards would bring?
The aim was to build a GS1 standard specifically adapted to clinical trials and to define best practices for how to implement it across the supply chain. We started with the basics, using the GTIN to identify the products and adding key elements like the lots or batch number, treatment or serial number, and study code. All these data, when they then encoded into a single data matrix barcode, the goal is to make it easy for every player, from the manufacturer to the clinical site and patient, to instantly capture and understand what perfectly they have in front of them: simple, universal, and reliable.
Creapharm clearly made a strong commitment to change, from updating IT systems to phasing out internal identifiers. From your experience being part of that journey, what do you think made the implementation so successful?
From the start, we saw the benefits clearly. The standard was going to bring value to everyone involved: sponsors, CROs, clinical sites, and ultimately patients. Internally, it was going to help us streamline operations, reduce risks, and ensure full traceability. It wasn't just a tool, it was going to become a solid framework for exchanging data and securing every step of the supply chain. And because we anticipate the changes early, we were able to prepare our systems and teams properly, which made the transition smooth.
And of course, the GS1 data matrix was a key part of the solution. From your point of view, Nicolas, what makes that specific barcode format such a good fit for the needs of clinical trials?
The data matrix barcode is a perfect fit because it can hold a lot of data in a very small space, which is exactly what we need in clinical trials. Unlike regular linear barcodes, it fits a small packagings, even when there's not much room left after the regulatory text. It lets us capture everything in one scan: product ID, batch number, serial number, study code. That makes the process faster, safer, and more efficient at every level.
You've also worked closely with tech providers, especially those who run systems like IRT and RTSM, which, to explain to our audience, help manage things like which patients get which treatments and how the medicine is delivered. Why is their role so important in making standardization work across the industry going forward?
These systems are the backbone of information exchange in clinical trial supply chain. So they manage all treatments are allocated, tracked, delivered, and dispensed to patients. When the manufacturer releases the products, this system handles everything: allocating treatments to patients enrolled, managing site shipments, and confirming deliveries. That's why it's so important that these platforms to support GS1 standards. If we want a truly connected supply chain, where information flows freely and accurately between all stakeholders, these systems have to speak the same language. It also makes things easier for clinical sites, which are often overloaded. With more automation and fewer manual steps, they can join more studies and help more patients access treatments.
We know that Scan Stories has a broad audience. Not everyone listening works in healthcare. For people who may not be familiar with how clinical trials work, what's one takeaway you hope they remember from this story?
If there's one thing to remember, it's that adopting a standard doesn't just benefit to your own organization. It helps the entire network you work with. It makes collaboration easier, data more reliable, and the world supply chain safer. Speaking the same language from manufacturer to clinical site saves time, avoids confusion, and reduces error. So no more telephone game with critical data.
Nicolas, thank you again for taking the time to share your insights and walk us through what happened behind the scenes. It's inspiring to see how much impact a common standard can have when organizations align around it, and how the Creapharm team, now Myonex, helped lead that transformation in such a complex space.
Thanks again for having me on this podcast. I hope this conversation helps more teams see the value of standards and take the step forward. Thank you.
If you haven't yet, make sure to listen to the main episode. It's episode 9, titled That One Barcode That Changed Clinical Trial Supply Chains, the story of Creapharm. You'll find it right here in your feed. And if you found this story useful, don't hesitate to share it with your network. Until next time, let's keep scanning for solutions that make a difference.